And we should be live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Back Pew, which is now a genuine podcast. Today's guests are Paulogia and Shannon Q. Shannon Q is running a bit late, but we have Paulogia on. Say hi, Paul.
Hey, everybody.
All right, now,
Nice
yeah. So now, all right. So first off, a few announcements. As I said before, this is now a genuine podcast. You can subscribe directly to the RSS feed if you're a nerd, or you can just listen to it in most places that you would listen to podcasts. This includes iTunes, of course. We also have Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, Podbean for those using more fringe apps for some reason. There are a couple places that we're not on. We are not on iHeartRadio or Spotify. iHeartRadio, because in order for me to be on there, I'd have to have like some premium thing on Spreaker, and that costs like $5 a month for something that everybody else does for free, so fuck them. And Spotify, because we need 5 episodes, and we simply don't have that yet. With this episode, we should be more than halfway. Also, I am sorry for the schedule. It's been really hectic. I know we did 2 shows in a row, and then I went without it for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this on a regular schedule, but my schedule has been hectic. But I believe I'm going to start doing this every other week. This week, not next week, but then the week after that. You get the point. This is subject to change. Maybe, depending on my personal circumstances, and as well as if I can get a guest that week. Also, subscribe to the Sinner's Pew channel. That's where these live streams will be held in the future, and this is where the videos are going to be uploaded to. I'm not going to keep it on this channel. Definitely subscribe to that channel to let me know that you are interested in this. You can also support me on Patreon to help with the production of not only this podcast, but everything else I do on my channel. Now, starting, well, I guess this episode, I have a special tier. If you pledge enough a month, then you will get audible credits in the podcast. Now, the only ones this month are the users Patreon Dan and Martin Palsmer, although Martin did not claim the tier, which you have to do, although I guess he didn't claim it in time. But he asked for it and he met the requirements, so you're welcome, Martin. And with all of that out of the way, we can start the show. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
So we have to get, so in order for us to get halfway, we have to produce half an episode tonight. That's what you're saying?
Oh, Shannon, you're on now.
We can do at least half an episode.
Can you make it that long, Paul?
I think so. Good stamina. I'm good.
I can attest to that.
Well, thank you guys for being here. Are you ready to dive into whatever this is?
Whatever this is, looks fascinating.
That's not the word I use. Well, yeah, maybe.
As you can see, this is a little bit older, so don't try to call that number. It probably doesn't work anymore. But let's hear what they have to say on atheism.
Okay. So, with that said, I want our viewers to go to the charts that we have here on the screen, and we'll briefly recap what was discussed in some length, in some detail last time. We have, of course, atheism. What does that mean? We checked with Webster's New World Dictionary, and Webster, of course, said it was the belief that there is no God, or denial that God or gods exist. Another textbook,
So notice that it says, or denial that God or gods exist. There are 2 totally separate things, right?
Well, this is... Go ahead, Shan.
I'm just marveling at the extendo pointer stick that he's using to point it as really high tech. Like, Mark, I like how they use multicolored markers so that it would stand out too. I'm just like, I can't get past that. You go ahead, Paul. You probably have valuable things to say.
Well, yeah. I mean, the other thing was this is apparently what they went over last episode. I'm glad we weren't here for it. If apparently what they did was just look things up in the dictionary, that would have been a fascinating show. But
Our last episode. Why didn't they just write it on this piece of paper and not even do the last episode?
yeah, no, belief and denial are very different things. Obviously, like to deny something, you have to somewhat at least accept that it exists, wouldn't you? I mean, I don't deny that they exist. I guess it does mean that if you deny the existence. Obviously, this is not, this looks to me to be the 70s or 80s, if I'm making a good guess, based on the glasses size of that guy's face.
Yeah, I should have checked.
The colloquial, I can imagine at the time that the dictionaries may not have included the colloquial definition of atheism, which would have been, just lack of a belief.
Mm-hmm.
Which most dictionaries now have as their second definition, but straight up just denial that God exists. That's one of my least favorite things people say about atheists. You're just denying it because you want to sin. I mean, they may as well put "you want to sin" because you want to sin on here.
Yeah, and I do think they go on later to say that we're in denial, so that's kind of fun. And of course, well, we're about to get to it, but from the philosophy of religion, of course, they're going to have the philosophical definition. But yeah,
Not even a philosophical definition.
That's
just this Gnostic atheism. That's amazing. Page 4.
yeah. So of course, this is a note we're starting off with. Atheism isn't what atheists say it is. So, pretty typical. Let's continue.
The philosophy of religion said the belief that there is no God of any kind, page 4. And of course, we see this as tying in directly with religion.
It is
that
religion.
Atheism is a religion. And our argument is that atheism is as much religious, is as much a religion as Roman Catholicism, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism. It's just another ism, only this one's called atheism.
Oh my God, citation needed.
So this is why I chose this video. Sorry?
Look how proud he is of himself. Look at his little Canadian grin.
Mm-hmm. But this is why I chose this video to talk about this week, because like right at the beginning, we're diving straight into this is what atheism is. Atheism is a religion, and this is pretty much all that I saw. I saw like a little bit after this, but this was enough to say, okay, this has got to be on the podcast.
I'm sorry for the people who are listening to this later without the visuals, because this guy's ring looks like it's a brass knuckle. Like this is the nerdiest dude pulled out of any 80s movie you can get, but he's got this giant ring to clock people the nose. It's something to see. Sorry, audio only people.
Yeah. I love the glasses matched with the suit that doesn't quite fit. That's my favorite.
I like that. Like his sleeves are protruding out so much that they're just pouring out when he lifts his...
I mean,
obviously none of that has to do with the arguments, but it makes the presentation a joy.
Oh yeah.
I can't see that just so that they can have a nice picture painted in their mind of exactly what it is that we're looking at.
Oh yeah. And if you want to enjoy the visual experience, subscribe to the channel. Links will be in the show notes for you podcast people.
Okay, and it's a religion. And as we see here in Webster's new 20th century dictionary, the definition of a religion is, of course, any specific system of belief.
So I find it interesting that they have to go from Webster's New World Dictionary to Webster's new 20th century dictionary. Two totally different dictionaries for something that they're trying to connect. Makes me feel like they're cherry picking.
Like, oh, this one works for what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
And of course, definitions are only reflective of usage. That's all they're good for. They are not prescriptive. They don't tell people. You don't appeal to the dictionary to get a new word put in there and say, "Hey, I would like everyone to use the word the way I use it." Like, please, people at Webster's, slip this in here. It's just reflective of usage. So anytime any speech opens to the dictionary, please don't open your speech with a definition from a dictionary. Anyway, it's not useful.
Confounds me so much too that, like, why do they need to make atheism a religion? That always perplexes and confuses me. So why do they wish so hard for it to be, so that they can accuse us of being as dogmatic as they are, so that they can have better constructed straw men, like, prettier straw men to tear apart.
Oh yeah, that's pretty much it. If atheism is a religion, if atheism is a claim, if atheism is a belief, then it can be shot down and disproven just as much as any actual belief or religion or system. If it's a lack of a belief in a god, then it's not something you can necessarily attack aside from, proving God.
Yeah, but it's almost as if they understand that they're dragging people down to their level. They're acknowledging that they are, like, they're saying, well, I might stink, but you guys stink too. And it's like, well, I think it's just an acknowledgement that they're trying to drag someone down to their level. It feels like, to me anyway.
And also a part of it is that, every other Christian preacher, well, most every other Christian preacher is also saying atheism is a belief and atheism is a religion. So they don't get their understanding of atheism from actual atheists. They're going off of what other Christians tell them because that's what they learned in church. So that's what they teach in their church, and it just gets passed around that way.
In fact, what's on the yellow paper here might be more accurate than what they get at the pulpit anyway. So maybe this is doing people a favor.
Well, they consulted 3 separate books, so that's a big deal for them. Usually they're one-book people.
Well, that's true.
But I mean, when it agrees with them, right?
We see up here in these first 2 definitions, worship, conduct, etc., often involving a code of ethics and a philosophy.
I just thought of something. It's on this denial that God exists, and that would mean that God exists and we're just denying it. So I would say atheists are in denial. They actually know that God does exist, and they're just God haters.
And there it is. We're diving straight into the deep end. Atheism is a belief, atheism is a religion, and atheists really do believe in God.
I hadn't realized that last one was actually the definition of religion, not the definition of atheism.
Oh,
So why did it say atheists have a code of conduct?
Yeah, and a philosophy?
Yeah.
Really?
Defying doctrine? Like, okay.
Yeah, not quite.
They just, like, present it. Like, we're not going to connect the dots at all. We're just going to say, this is what atheism is, this is what religion is, and then we're just going to say atheism is a religion, and then just...
Yeah, but...
mic drop with, like, indignant, smug looks on our faces.
But I swear, sometimes, I'm not saying these guys are going to do it, though I wouldn't be surprised, but they'll say, oh, atheism leads to communism. Atheism has this philosophy. It has no morals. It has that sort of thing. I'm hoping they don't tie it in with that, but given the start, I'm not hopeful.
But just in case you have anyone listening who is not, on board with what I think the 3 of us would call atheism, like, just to be on the record about this, we feel that atheism is the answer to one specific question, and that question is, do you believe that there's a God? And if the answer is no, then you're an atheist. And that's literally the only thing that you could tell about an atheist is the answer to that one single question.
Oh, yeah. I probably should have included that.
And they're in denial, So we all know about people in denial. You got to face the facts.
Well,
I think you guys just need to face the facts. I mean, you know in your heart that God exists, but come on. You can't live in denial forever, right?
This stuff infuriates me because I tried so hard to continue to believe. Like, it literally, like, I am an involuntary atheist. I became an atheist through no choice of my own. I just had to be honest with myself that I couldn't, and I was believing anymore, and be honest with myself. I didn't make a choice that, you know what, screw it. I want to, you know, drink and have sex with all the people, and, you know, I want to shoot someone and then rob some people of some stuff. So, you know, I'm just going to deny God because apparently that's the solution to that problem. I couldn't logically hold the idea.
Oh, well, if that was the case, then you wouldn't be doing all this stuff on YouTube that you do. You have to be pushing back for some reason because you're in denial.
Yeah, that's right. I want everybody to see my denial. That's sure.
At least guys like
Fine,
Saitan Bergenkate, or however you say his name, at least he acknowledges that perhaps that denial might not be conscious. He at least is trying to pretend, oh, maybe you don't understand that you are. But this guy looks like this smug face is definitely saying that we are just actively sitting around holding it back like some kind of dam we've built around ourselves.
I wonder how many times these two high-fived each other when they were putting this presentation together. Like, get it, guys! Man, this is gonna get them. You're like, man, oh man, guys, wait until they see this. Look at this stuff we wrote down from these 3 books, guys. Oh man, we're getting promotion.
Yeah, they really got us. They got us now.
Atheism. I'm done. They win.
I'd like to say about atheism, as long as you mention that fact, that atheism is sort of like it's almost like you have to take a mental drug. You know how you can take Novocaine to deaden the nerve endings or something? Well, I almost think like atheism is like a drug, a mental drug. Instead of Novocaine, maybe I would call it like stupid cane. And you take this drug that deadens your concepts of reality.
High five.
I'm crying. Oh my god. Oh, the psychologist in me doesn't even know where to start.
Once you get hooked on the atheism, you're not going to go back, and it's just going to deaden all of your concepts of reality. Not kill your concept of the reality, but deaden. I mean, they were just using the dictionary. Surely you could have kept using it for a little bit.
I know, or just looked up, like, is Novocaine a mental agent? Like, just real quick.
Well, no, he understood at least that Novocaine wasn't a mental drug. He just didn't have the vocabulary to put together what it should be called.
What he was trying to do, he was trying to make it out. Novocaine makes you numb and deadens your nerve impulses, blocks your nerve impulses from being processed. So I get what he's trying to do here. It's just, God, like it doesn't understand anything about neurology at all. Just you can't just hold an idea and then the thought of that concept just suddenly shuts portions of your brain down and lowers your IQ. It doesn't freaking work that way. You're not just like, I thought about atheism, and then all of a sudden you're like, I can't remember how to use my hands. It doesn't work.
I don't remember what it feels like to feel bad for someone. I just have no morals now. What is this new atheism thing?
The two of you are hooked on stupid cane, and you know it. And that's what's causing all your problems.
I know. I just woke up one morning and I was like, I want to sin. And then the moment I said that, I was like, I don't give a shit about people anymore. And also, I can't remember where I put my stuff.
Of course, I can imagine, editing this video in such a way where all you have to do is replace, obviously the word atheism with religion or Christianity or anything. I mean, to just basically come out and say that your opponent's position is because they're stupid. You can put any position in there in the world you want. Globe Earth, round Earth, it doesn't matter. Like, we're dealing with a couple of geniuses here. That's a couple of debating experts.
Exactly.
Project much?
Okay, it's a worldview, obviously, but You have to deaden your concept of reality. Look around at creation. Look at the design of nature, and suddenly say, well, all this came out of nothing, and it just happened by random
We're
chance.
just some accident from chemicals.
Right.
Like
You
a
almost
bug.
have to almost deny rationality itself.
I was waiting for him to say trees. I specifically wanted to look at the trees because those are the magical.
You know, this is like a part one of three sort of series. Even though they said this is a part two, that's probably some sort of bigger series. I don't understand how they numbered these things. But there was another one where they talked about evolution, and I got so close to picking that one to respond to because I feel like Paul, you would have a field day with that one. But skimming through it, there wasn't a whole lot of meat to it, which was sad.
Well, just again for the record, if anyone's listening who thinks that what he said rings really true, the Big Bang was not an explosion. The Big Bang was an expansion of matter and energy, primarily energy. So this idea of nothing is ridiculous. We don't know what happened before the Big Bang, if that is even a lucid concept. But I personally feel that matter and energy are probably the eternal thing. If you have to pick something to be eternal in the universe, regardless, even if you don't think so, the matter and energy existed before the Big Bang. So it was not from nothing. The cause we don't know, but that's fine. We're not talking about random chance. We're talking about natural processes that are well understood and that even the Ken Hams of the world accept at most levels. This kind of not understanding what evolution of the Big Bang is does not help. If you'd like to convince someone that they are wrong, you actually have to understand what their position is. So please, please, please look it up.
I don't like. Why does it always have to go back to the beginning of the universe? Like, like maybe I don't know. Kinda. You could maybe justify some of the specific positions that your religion has. Why does it have to? Why do you have to skip over all of the Jesus stuff and go back to the beginning of the universe to try to debunk us? Just because that's the one thing both of us don't know. For certain. Like that's what you have to do. Go back to and also going back to the beginning of the universe, just because nobody knows with absolute certainty what happened. Neither one of us do. We're on an even playing field there. We know exactly the same amount about that as you do. The only difference is that you're saying, well, I do know, and I'm saying, well, we have a general idea, but no one's really sure.
But so, Shannon, would you be okay with his qualification that atheism is a worldview?
I don't think so. Nope. No, because there's such a myriad of worldviews just within the spectrum of people that I even know personally that would label themselves. So I don't think so. I think that you could really look at it as a worldview is one of the reasons that I think that it's a good idea is because you're no longer constrained by ideology when you're assimilating new thoughts, when you receive new information. You no longer have to fit that information into a box until it bends or breaks. Free to create new schematic with that information. So if not being constrained by something is a worldview, then sure, but that makes your worldview limitless. So if limitless is a worldview, then yeah, sure, atheism is a limitless worldview.
I mean, I guess it could affect your worldview in the way that you typically would view the world without a god, or not in a way that involves a god. But even that is just a lack of your worldview that there is a god, and that's really all it is.
But it doesn't indicate anything in particular. Like I would dare any religious ilk to just write down, just create a brief little point by point what an atheist worldview is.
Mm-hmm.
See it. Let's see. Let's see how many people actually fit into what your definition of that is. Like, if it consists of more than that, we don't believe that there's a God. I'd be surprised, unless
Then your
you
list
guys
is too long. Your list-
Other than that, like, what else is on the list?
Yeah.
Let's see what they say.
Yeah. Well, but I did want to say, as far as when they go back to the Big Bang or the primordial soup, that's really because they can put it in a way where it sounds ridiculous. Like, oh, these atheists, they believe that nothing exploded and became everything, and that we just crawled out of a soup. But I mean, obviously, there's a lot more nuance to it than that. But I think that's really what it is, just trying to make us look bad.
My favorite this last week was I heard Kent Hovind debating someone, and he was talking. He was talking about amoebas. He said, "Well, amoebas can't have evolved because when they crawled out, how could they find someone to marry?" And that made complete sense to everyone in his audience. Well, yeah, who would the amoeba marry? So, I mean, that's the level.
Exactly. I don't think we're dealing with much more mental power here, but let's hear it.
To make a
Exactly.
statement like that.
Yeah.
So I think atheism is like taking a drug. It's a self-induced psychological mental condition.
Mm-hmm, totally.
That really, in my opinion, is kind of a detriment to the culture. If you want to liken it to a disease or a microorganism in a body of tissue that can cause cancer or whatever, atheism is much like this. It's like a disease or a psychological mental state that comes into the culture and then.
Okay, so to recap, start off defining atheism as not what most atheists say it is. Atheism is a belief. Atheism is a religion. Atheism is a worldview. They believe that, nothing exploded, becoming everything. We crawled out of a primordial soup. Also, atheism is a virus, a disease, and a cancer. So we're starting off, on the best foot forward here.
I almost feel like if you did this video, taking out all the atheism claims and just talking about what this guy knows about biology. So he just said, you don't need to debunk. Like this guy just said that cancer is caused by infections. Like if you cut your hand, you might get cancer if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's bacteria in a set of tissue that causes cancer. That's how it works, right? Did they know that much about it in the 70s or whenever this was?
Oh, they knew better than that. This guy did not. This guy. Now, obviously, I'm assuming he's going to talk about the things that he thinks are bad, but of course, Shannon and I are anti-theists. I don't know if you would use that title for yourself, Heath, but
what do you mean by anti-theist?
well, I think by anti-theism. Shannon, I will leave that to you. You're the expert on the definition.
Throws out anti-theist, and then he goes, Shannon.
Of course, throwing it to you. I don't know how to handle this. Here, you started it.
I'm still hung up on that atheism is a psychological mental condition, but I'll blow past that for a second. I would identify as an anti-theist because I believe that on measure, people on a personal level better off, or on an individual level, I should say, more so than personal. On an individual level, people would be better off without the constraints of imposed religious ideology, and that includes self-imposed religious ideology. I think without the constraints of that imposes upon somebody, life in their relationships, in their decisions, would be. That's what when I say that I'm an anti-theist, that is what that means. It doesn't mean that I want to forcibly remove religion, or that people don't have the right to religion, or that I want to, take up arms against religion. It just means that that's a personal position that I hold in regards.
And my version of that is very similar, but I actually also, and I'm sure Shannon does too, I extend it to the society at large. I feel like in all cases, the net benefit that is provided by religion is less than the net harm that it does, and that if religion was removed from society, a la some Star Trek utopia, there would be a net benefit to society for doing so. So it's funny. It's just funny because this guy is, and I get that it's at that point it's a somewhat personal opinion because we have only one world, so we don't have test cases. We can't say, well, there's a world with no religion. We can't do empirical testing on this, but we have the opposite opinions. Obviously, this guy thinks atheism is causing societal problems. We think religion is. I would love to point to modern societies in Europe, say Sweden or Finland or some of those countries where there's next to no religion and they are prospering in peace above most of the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would agree with you on that, but
only rain for a little bit.
Sorry, there are other people that live with me. But
Me too.
Yeah, I don't know if you could hear them back there, but I could hear
That's
them.
right.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Though I personally, I'm not necessarily so antagonistic to religion because I don't feel like we're ever going to get rid of it. I recognize that people aren't going to think the same way that I do. They just can't. People are always going to think dogmatically and superstitiously, and religion, there's a reason why there's so much religion in the world, because it really appeals to people. So I don't think this is a requisite, but I wouldn't personally call myself an anti-theist because I feel like trying to antagonize religion or minimize religion.
Something interesting twice there. You said you've used the word antagonist or antagonize a couple of times, and that makes me feel like maybe I misrepresented myself.
I probably
I think that's a misnomer. I think that's a common think about somebody who identifies as an anti-theist that isn't necessarily true. I don't believe that to individually deconvert people. I'm not a door knocker. I don't want to go on people's doors and say, have you heard that there is no God? Right? It's essentially just personally think that these types of issues are worth being in the general discussion, and based on the general discussion as I've seen it thus far, that is the case. Now, it's not a call to action.
Okay.
Which is, I think, what people think. So people are hesitant to identify as it, which is respect. Like, I completely respect that. I'm not suggesting that you should. But if you're not, or if you're attesting to the reasons that you're not, antagonistic makes me feel like I didn't represent as adequately, because that's not a component of it. Do you understand why? I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I heard it twice, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, no. I completely understand. I think I just assumed that that's kind of what went with it, and also, like, I feel like that's the kind of stigma around it, so that's why I don't call myself that, because people will think of me that way. But I also haven't really heard it presented. I haven't really heard it presented the way, you guys say it. So in that way, yeah, I suppose I would be an anti-theist. But I think I've heard like several different ideas of what anti-theist would mean. So,
well, as always, and this guy is very guilty of it. As always with labels, the best thing to do is to actually ask someone what they think, as opposed to bringing your definition of their label. I don't care what label it is. Ask the person. It takes just a minute, and then you can carry on from there.
Oh, yeah.
And just really quickly before we get off the topic, I just want to say that one of the reasons that I do identify publicly as such is so that these conversations can be had, because I think that a lot of people are hesitant to take on the label because it has such a stigmatization in a negative context. And unless somebody instantiates what the label is publicly and helps to clarify that, then we'll never get past that stigma. And that's one of the reasons that I do it publicly. So sorry to get off this delightful video.
Oh, no.
But, it's Paul's fault.
As always.
I'm just sitting here minding my own business.
No, I mean, that's something I think I needed to figure out eventually. So, no, I mean, thanks for chasing that rabbit hole. Hopefully the listeners will learn something. But let's hear more about how atheism is a mental disease, disorder, condition, virus, bacteria, cancer.
It seeks to destroy that culture almost, in that it goes against the grain.
Yes.
And it fights against
That's right.
what most people see as obvious, that there is something out there that created all this.
Well, along those.
So there are people out there that are militant atheists. Yeah, that's a better word to describe what I was thinking of. Militant atheists that are actively seeking to deconvert them.
Sure. Is this an American video? I assume it's American.
I believe so.
Because one of the things that we're seeing now, in the media, or at least I'm seeing in social media, when you look at the new Supreme Court justice that's being examined and that kind of thing, I'm seeing a lot of this argument, and that is, we Christians are the majority, so the rest of you should shut up.
Oh yeah.
And it's just funny that this looks like it could be 30 or 40 years old, and that argument is still there. It's that we are the majority, so the rest of you are obviously like against the grain. Why don't you just put up? Why don't you just go along? Why don't you get out of our country if you don't want what we want? It's just disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, are they trying to say they're saying it's a disease because it's going against what most people believe, but because most people believe it or find it obvious doesn't mean it's correct.
Sure doesn't. And I can't get past the staging that they chose. Those books, weird things stick out to me. There is no way that they were just sitting there reading all 37 of those books that are haphazardly set out in front of them. That was a purposeful staging choice. That's supposed to set the tone that, look, we read to do this.
But also someone was sitting around going, well, how many books do we need to seem smart? Like 15?
And also, we can't stack them neatly, because then it'll look like we weren't reading them. It has to look like we've been all up in this book's business, so we have to kind of... I wonder whose job it was to make it look like these are the used books. Anyway, sorry, I have...
No, I believe like every now and then they'll say something like, oh, if you read or look into this book, this is where we found this information, or as this book says, and they hold up the books to demonstrate. I think I saw them do that. I'm not sure. Maybe.
So Answers in Genesis is not the first to do that? Run a whole program just to sell books? Wow.
What? I just know that existed before.
Yeah, maybe if we're lucky, we'll get Shield their book. Let's see.
Lines, I'd like to add that the Bible states that we are born with an innate knowledge that there is a God. And a matter of fact, the desire, we feel empty without Him. And so hopefully that emptiness would lead us to find Christ and then have that fellowship restored with God.
Not everybody feels as empty as you do without religion. You see, religion can very well be used as a coping mechanism, and I believe that's really what they're referring to here. Like, oh, I use religion to cope with this. I didn't feel full without Him. And then they just kind of apply that to everybody. Everybody has a God-shaped hole in their heart. Well, I don't. I don't have an emotional need. And if I do, then I could very well find another coping mechanism. But how about you guys? Do you guys have a God-shaped hole in your heart?
No.
No. But obviously, it makes zero difference to these people, because their book says that if we say that we are fulfilled, that we are either self-deluded or lying. Like, they have the perfect... If you're going to create a religion, that is definitely a clause that is very smart to put in, and that is that anyone who denies your religion is just denying it or lying, because they can circularly feed on that. So when you gave that answer that you are not fulfilled, they would just say, you're wrong.
And I'm sorry,
mentally ill. We're mentally ill. That's yeah.
We are.
I felt better after. Like, I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I exhaled for the first time in a long time once I finally came to that realization. I don't know, maybe that's not an experience other people have.
No, no, absolutely. I mean, despite whatever personal costs and family stuff, being intellectually honest with myself gave me so much freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah, and
I can figure stuff out myself. I don't have to fit it inside this framework. And if it doesn't fit inside this framework, either disregard it or augment it, actually assimilate information that disagrees with this framework and get a clearer view of how reality works and be a much more functional person and happier person and not have as much dissonance.
And
I don't know about my heart, but there was way less holes in my brain after I was done.
Yeah, for me personally, it was also really difficult to leave my religion, to accept that my religion maybe isn't true, because I was really pushed, not to doubt, or I was like real afraid of having doubt or questioning God. And I guess not every Christian sect is like that. But that too is a huge detriment, when you're taught not to question and to go with everything that we say because we say it.
It isn't a great system to accumulate knowledge in a healthy manner.
Yeah.
It's not.
They're also not helping their own argument that atheism is a religion, since they're basically trying to say that the point of religion is to fill the hole in your heart. But they're saying atheism does nothing to fill the hole in your heart. Well, then it's not a religion, because it's not fulfilling the point.
I think they were saying. I think they were saying that God fills the hole in your heart. So if you don't have God, then, you're lying to yourself.
You cannot have any religion, believe in God, and why would God still not have that hole in your heart filled? Like, these arguments are confusing. Like, you could have a deistic perspective. What would they say to a deist who doesn't subscribe to their religion or any religion at all, thinks it's all garbage, but still believes that there's a God, and has created essentially kind of their own views based on research and studying and their perceptions of the world as to what God is, but doesn't subscribe to any religion? What would they say to somebody like that? Does that person have a hole?
I think they would. I think they would go. They would be excited that they don't have to go with the burden of proof that there is a God, and I think they would try and move to the appeal to emotion, which is largely all it is anyway.
They're all over the board. Then it all falls apart, because or unless they're not making arguments for the Christian God specifically, they're just making generalized arguments for a belief in any God at all. In which case, then. Great, like they're on board with Muslims then, and they think that the Jewish religion is fine. They'd be all right with polytheists because they believe in all kinds of gods. So their hole is super full.
Well, this particular episode seems to be about dragging the atheist straw man around on the street.
Yeah, fuck us.
Well, I mean, we're not even 6 minutes into the video, so. And this is like an hour long. This is like an hour long. I don't know if this was a broadcast or what. So, yeah. Also, I'm terribly sorry to everyone who just now joined us. Turns out the stream was unlisted, so the only way to find it was through Twitter. I apologize. Setting up this particular episode was just absolutely bonkers because I was trying not to make any mistakes, trying to get everything right. And I still have a whole bunch of stuff messing up. I'm sorry. I'll get better in the future. Anyhow, let's continue.
Well, we're all set.
But you want to see what atheism does, look at communism. Okay, there.
I knew it. I knew it.
Bing, 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 bing.
I forget if I actually said that or if I was thinking it loudly, but goddamn.
You said it. I wish that there was. We should have placed instead of saying "I wonder if they will." The next time you do something like this, you should just start a poll. Like, at what minute mark do you think they're going to call it communist? Like, everybody in the chat, put a timestamp in.
That's true. You can do your atheism as religion bingo card.
Oh, that's a good idea. We should do that.
Solid. acknowledge
Okay.
communism. Can't have knowledge of what else. There's just so many things that could go. Heath, you should do that. Please do that. I'd get a bingo card.
I'll try. Not sure exactly how to implement that, but yeah. So yeah. So atheism leads to communism, or something along those lines. They're really painting a nice, healthy picture of atheism, of us atheists.
This looks like right around the time when Rocky IV might have been coming out, so they were probably really scared of communists at the time.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
made a list too of like what we're. I've lost track. So we have a mental condition. It's a religion.
Exactly.
It leads to communism. It's like a
Infection.
bacteria,
It's a cancer.
It's like that cancer-causing bacteria that we all.
Across the grain. Yeah.
It causes us to be numb. We're deluded, and we're in denial.
Oh yeah. It's
I'm definitely asking my pharmacist about stupid cane later.
I think you already have it. Looking at your YouTube channel, you already have it.
Yeah. All right.
An atheistic, well, they control the people because they don't want any beliefs hindering their government control over the people. So what you have is these oppressed people that have no hope, that are totally empty. You can look in their eyes. You see the poverty. You see.
Have you looked into a communist's eyes? I don't think this person has.
That is the opposite of look at the trees argument.
He's saying look into the eyes of the people too. He's saying like if you look into the the communist
Look
people,
into their poor little communist hearts. See what atheism has done to them. I mean, it's not about, you know, the political situation. It's not a political movement. It's not, you know, anything about that. It's the religion specifically that led to communism, that led to that dead look in their eyes.
But he even said himself that they don't want anybody having any. Okay, well then obviously atheism's counted out too, because according to their stupid whatever the hell dictionary definition, atheism is a set of beliefs. So that would fall under their gamut. So it's a self-defeating argument. They're just stupid as God. I can't keep track anymore. It's like I feel like I'm kicking a baby. That's what I feel like. They're that dumb. He is like Alex Jones level of like about to like start spitting when he's talking.
Oh yeah. And now I'm fairly confident that this video is from before I was even born. But I feel like this may have been from a time where there was like a much bigger push against atheists, a much bigger stigma than there is now, where, you know, growing up, I used to hear a lot of the things that they're saying, that atheism is a belief, it is a religion, Big Bang is an explosion of nothing, but I haven't heard it like as densely compact as this, and I feel like that's really starting to fade out, and it's kind of hard to come across now, which is, you know, a shame for people like us that respond to it on YouTube regularly, but I'm glad that stuff like this isn't that common.
Well, this is 100% pre-internet. Like this is absolutely, like these were not facts that someone could look up and check, and probably, you know, similarly to, say, you know, homosexuality issues or, you know, discrimination in the same time. It's like you may not have personally known someone who was out as gay, because of course people were less out. So I certainly know at this time, like, you know, in talking to my parents now, they didn't know people who were out as atheists. Like, so it's easy to build up this boogeyman when the people you're talking to don't know anyone personally who even uses the label. So obviously the kind of thing that all of our channels do, which is try to normalize the word atheism and normalize what it is like to be, is going to make this stuff look even ridiculous to the most ardent fundamentalist, I would think.
Oh yeah.
the economical chaos, you see that communism doesn't work. Well, atheism doesn't work.
Because they're totally interconnected. You know, if there's atheism, there's communism. If one doesn't work, then the other is just out the window as well. Communism is not based on atheism. My non-existent God.
The way they get around it, though, is that communism was repressive to religions, but it wasn't. Because it was because because the state essentially was the religion. Like if the state was to be what was, and it created dogmas that needed to be adhered to, and it was about control over people.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because they were atheists. They wanted to have control over people and peel religion away from them. This frustrates because every time I hear the argument, atheism has killed more people throughout the world than all the religions combined. I'm like, no, it fucking hasn't. Communism has.
Yeah, and that's what I usually.
Synonyms.
That's what I usually say when they bring up communism and Stalin and Mao. I say there's a difference between atheism and state atheism. I am not advocating for state atheism, not advocating for it either. But yeah.
But of course, the other thing I like to add on the end of that is like, well, let's pretend that every murder that's ever happened in the entire history of humanity was committed by an atheist. That tells us nothing about whether a God exists.
Yeah.
It tells us nothing at all. It just tells us of perhaps the societal usefulness of religion. Nothing about the truth of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so I just wanted to point that out, that it's very dangerous to society in general. Not to mention, why should we have any morals? And there is no reason.
There it is.
Uh-huh.
Bingo, Yahtzee.
Under the B, no morals. No morals.
Stuff like that, I'm sure.
Oh boy. And you know, I love stuff like this because it really shows that these sorts of things that we hear even to this day, they've been saying for a long time. And you can even find debates that are hundreds of years old showing that atheists have been responding to these things in the same way for a long time.
If I could actually be so bold as to plug Shannon's podcast, which I'm not on, but Shannon's Season Hour podcast last night had Richard Carrier on, laying out a great case for just the evolutionary necessity of a moral system, and you know, and he laid it out brilliantly. So if you're still in doubt on this point, that would be at least one resource to check out. Obviously, it's been debated by Sam Harris and many others, but we're a social species, so therefore some sort of morality is going to evolve, and as time goes on, better moral systems beat out lesser moral systems, which is partially why we have a New Testament and an Old Testament. And then, of course, some testaments after that people disagree whether they're part.
Yeah.
Morals, and if you don't have have any morals, then you have total chaos, and that's not a good place to live.
So
why am I not drinking? I'm sorry. Why am I not drinking?
That's why we see in prisons, for example, that, you know, the vast majority of the population are religious, and the atheists are drastically underrepresented there.
Yeah, and you know, the countries nowadays that are largely irreligious, they're just all going crazy. It's chaotic. The government's being overthrown. There's no justice system. There's no morality, and you know, the countries that are
living together.
Yeah, the countries that are largely religious are doing super well and totally not going at war.
Oops, I'm sorry. Cash in your get out of hell free card that they can cash in. I have to live with every decision that I make and all the repercussions that has to my real life, without the promise of a, hey, I'm sorry, I can live on for eternity in paradise. After that, this is all I get, so I better make the goddamn best of it. And I have to, like, I don't have the promise of that. I'm not just waiting it out. I can't just live a life of just absolute reprehensible behavior and be like, sorry, and then just cash in my heaven card. This is all I get, so I have to live now.
Yeah.
So, I really made a bad decision not being drunk right now. I'm sorry. I'm getting all worked up. Just like every argument I hate, like in a condensed stupid mug.
Yeah, I should have that. I should have that disclaimer for guests. You're probably going to want to drink or two.
Somebody should have warned me.
I'm way ahead of you. I've seen this.
Oh, God.
No, but I feel like, especially as far as morality goes, these guys, these televangelists and whatnot, they get their morality from religion, largely. And I think that they've been that way for so long, and they believe their personal morality so strongly that it's hard for them to sort of understand or accept the fact that other people think in different ways than they do. That not everybody gets their morality from religion or from a holy book.
And of course, they don't either. Like, they haven't thought this through to recognize that they cherry pick parts that they think feel good to them, and they ignore parts that don't feel good, and that they really have evolved their own morality that may be Bible themed, but they're definitely not adhering to everything in the book. Anyway. Yeah. It's not objective. It's not whatever the Bible says goes. They're interpreting this the way that makes them comfortable.
Smashing babies on rocks.
Yeah.
And they'd be getting bears to kill kids.
They're not stoning adulterers or people that have been raped. Or not allowing divorce under any circumstance. Like, they're not following the things they think they are. They might even be boiling goats in their mother's milk. We don't know.
That's Old Testament, guys. We've moved on. We're on a New Testament.
Well, the rest of it was New Testament.
So
we just
uphold the law. So
yeah, we just hate abortions, the gays, and atheists now. That's it. That's it.
God totally gives abortions in the Bible. Like, read Numbers. Honest to God, the test for the unfaithful wife.
Yeah, I love that part. That's my favorite part of the Bible.
That's the one that did it for me.
Really?
Reading through, that literally is the one that did it for me. As I was reading through, I'm pro-choice, but I was trying to grapple with a bunch of stuff, and I turned to my faith when I was really, really faithful. And I was like, you know what? I've never read it cover to cover. I've only ever read it like in passages, at the time, because a priest, let's say, suggested this passage will help you right now, that sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to read it cover to cover.
Mm-hmm.
I hit Numbers. I think it might be 31, the test for the unfaithful wife, and I threw it. I threw the book, and that's the one that I was like, it's like something in my head just snapped, and I was like, I am more moral than God. Like, what am I deriving from this? Damn sense.
Yeah. And there's a quote, I should know who it's from, but somebody said at some time that the best way to, I'm going to butcher the quote, but the best way to deconvert someone is for them to read the Bible. There's totally butchering that quote, but and I didn't really believe it at first, but come to think of it, I only really started having my doubts after I decided to read the Bible for myself. Not necessarily cover to cover, because I started in the New Testament and was just bored all the time. It's really boring. If you ever tried to read the Bible, it's really boring. I don't recommend it. But
so much lineage. So much begatting.
Yeah. even skipping over that, it's like the stories are just uninteresting. But yeah, really, like sort of seeing how the Bible unfolds and the exact nature of what it is, it really it's not very inspiring unless you're cherry picking it.
A lot of people think the New Testament is the story of Jesus in one long narrative.
Oh no.
They don't realize that it's essentially several different stories that are similar, many ways different and disparate from one another. Like even the lineages that lead up to Jesus being born. For starters, they're the male lineage, and the last I checked, Joseph wasn't God, so he's not his friggin' father. but even those are different. Like the lineages to track him back to David, they're disparate. They're not the same, even in between the Gospels.
And they go through Joseph, even though he wasn't his actual biological father, but it counts anyway.
I guess it's almost like, ancient people didn't really have a strong grasp about how baby making
Yeah, I don't know.
The audience, I think the quote you were looking for was Isaac Asimov's. Properly read, the Bible is the most potent force for atheism ever conceived.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It sounds way better when you put it like that.
Right. Very well said. Okay, with that said, let's move on then with our statement then that
Look at
atheism...
Yeah, I love it. I wish I was... I wish I was there at the time and they had some way of donating so that maybe this guy could upgrade to a laser pointer.
I think that this is way before laser pointers.
Really? I don't know how old laser pointers are.
Like they couldn't even get it printed. It's all handwritten.
I mean, it's...
had to rewrite them.
I mean, they're also in, like, rolling desk chairs. I don't think this was a very high-budget production. All right?
What? Talk about them like
we
that.
blew it all getting 12 books for the front counter. So.
Whatever this weird gray cover is.
Is a religion. We see that here we have an example of it.
I just noticed they have the same glasses.
Except their faces are so different that you can't tell.
Yeah, the smaller guy has bigger glasses. And it's I think that really adds to the charm.
For the podcast listeners, we basically have a Laurel and Hardy vibe going on here. We got it. Although I now, and no one who listens to a podcast knows who those people are because I'm 1,000 years old. So I'm gonna step aside now.
Book, which I've shown on a previous show, we're just recapping briefly here. Madeline Murray O'Hare's book, What on Earth is an Atheist? And of course, in here, I'm not going to read the whole quote for sake of time, but basically she says that man is capable of mastering the forces of nature, man is capable of creating a social system, materialism's faith is in man, and man's ability to transform the world by his own efforts. And of course, another atheist, B.C. Johnson, in the book, The Atheist Debater's Handbook, states, the atheist may claim to know that God does not exist. So
he's conflating materialists, and I hate it when people do this. He's conflating a materialist with an atheist, which is so not true.
Oh yeah.
I am personally not even a materialist. Like I believe in methodological naturalism as a necessary component of science, but I'm not a philosophical naturalist. I leave open that there could be a supernatural realm that maybe we will see evidence for, maybe we won't. I mean, those are not the same thing. Those are not the same thing. If you're out there listening, you think they are. They're not.
Oh, and in the bottom, the last quote that he read is a description of which most 90
a hard atheist.
Yeah, like hard atheism. Most atheists wouldn't claim that they know for certain that there is no God, absolutely 100%. There isn't even a possibility. The probability is zero. No, like you would be hard fought to find an atheist who would say that, because there's
Richard Dawkins
that
doesn't even put himself at that level.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
yeah. But I mean, even with what he read, men is capable of creating social system. You can do this. You can do that. None of this. I mean, of course, it's not talking about atheism. It's talking about materialism. But none of this is saying that you should do this. They're trying to spin this into atheism is a religion. This is their beliefs. This is what they're out to do. But no,
like this is a manifesto of some kind. Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Pretty much.
So here they have a faith in man. That man is. They believe that man is capable of creating a social system, and that they know that God does not exist. All these seem to be inherent in the attributes of religion.
I don't know if this author was an atheist or not. This Madeline O'Hare. Is that really her name? Madeline O'Hare? Anyway, I don't know if that was... This doesn't sound like something that an atheist would write about themselves. This sounds like a theist describing what they think atheists are.
Yeah. And... where did he say it? Yeah, he said, they used the word faith. And they're not saying that, we need to have blind faith. We need to accept this on faith. But it's saying materialism's faith is in man, as in materialism's confidence is in man. That's not religious.
By anyone's standards. So with
that I just wanted to say on that we have a similarity between the Bible and this statement. Well, first of all, man is not capable of mastering, let's say, the revolution of the Earth around the sun, the orbit, tornadoes, but he is he's a created being, and God made him in his own image. God's the creator, so he's creative, and of course we have faith. Except we leave out God and say the faith is in man. And just like many false religions and a pride cult, you would say, what is actually happening is man states that he is God, since he doesn't believe in God. That way he can be God. So it's a big ego trip, basically, is what it is.
So we're just trying to be God. As atheists, we're just trying to be God on our huge ego trip. And that's our religion.
He called it an ego cult? Is that what he called it?
Yeah, it's something like that, yeah.
Oh, pride cult. Pride cult.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
And back to my last thing, I feel stupid now. Madeline O'Hare was actually the founder of the American Atheist Association, so sorry, Madeline.
I'm sure she forgives you.
Yeah, and just speaking of cults and things, it kind of reminds me of these cult leaders. Bhatsran Sri Ranish, that was out there in Oregon for a while before he...
93 Rolls Royces,
right,
give up all your property.
Before he got deported or something, changed his name to Osho or something like that. But you have these cult leaders, Reverend Moon of the Unification Church, so forth. Well, I wanted to quote Madeline Murray O'Hara in a sense, because atheism is a religion that she is, I guess, seen as one of the foremost atheists, and therefore sort of like a cult leader.
God, religion.
We have no leaders.
Well, Madeline O'Hare was one of them.
Yeah, who I didn't recognize the name of.
You don't even recognize one of the former leaders of our atheism cult. You're kicked out of the atheism cult now.
Exactly. It's like not knowing who the popes are.
Yeah, you're an agnostic now. You're not part of our cult anymore.
Demoted.
You've been demoted. This video really hits all the high marks, doesn't it? It's like the most condensed, like anti-atheist bullshit I think I've ever seen. You're doing it at a breakneck pace too. We're only like 8 minutes into the video.
Actually 9 minutes 25 seconds, but I did skip a good portion of the beginning because it's just, introduction, opening screen, what have you. I skipped to when they actually start saying something. But yeah, not that terribly far into this hour-long show presentation. Whatever. Anyhow,
Taken out of school. That's one lady. Is that really the whole consensus of the United States? I mean, how did that happen?
Right.
Ridiculous.
He just basically says hating a non-existent God, and he talks about the history of how...
I don't know what we just cut to. Let's just roll with it. That wasn't me. That's part of the video, but okay.
Okay.
Atheists in the past used to say, well, live and let live. If those idiots want to believe in some kind of God and their fairy tales, they can believe in all that nonsense. I'm not going to worry about it. But of course, now there's been a shift since Hegel and these other philosophers that lived back in the 17th and 18th centuries, and they have now got this kind of viciousness attached to their atheism, where they don't have this live and let live type of philosophy anymore. They have like a very aggressive attack and destroy religion type of a very vindictive type of thing.
So now the list has gotten so long. We are a cancer, we're a religion, but we're also pretty much all anti-theists now.
Militant atheists.
Militant atheists. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's going to take a while for me to get used to that. Militant atheists.
And I like also how he says now, and then also says back in the 17th and 18th century. That's now. Like it's a recent occurrence.
Yeah, now started back then, but that's how it is now. A part of me can't feel bad for stereotyping atheism so strongly, because this guy is like the stereotype for televangelists. So I guess that's just kind of what we're dealing with here.
And on these charts, Dr. Morey makes mention, and now we don't really need a super zoom in of all of these, but basically on these first three charts that we have up, or these first three pages on the chart, Dr. Morey...
He looks so confused. I'm sorry for the podcast people. But his co-host stared at him just like that kid was looking at Trump the other day. If you've seen that on the news, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I loved that he pointed to the quote that he has on this easel. And he's like, this here, we don't need a zoom in of it. And of course, the camera was zoomed in on it. So after he said that, the camera looked away at this other guy with this weirdly shaped bald head. So that cracked me up.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't hold that in.
No.
He goes into how these atheists hate God. They're bitter. They have a rage that seems to permeate their personalities.
And I really got that vibe when I was watching both of your videos. You really hate God. There's this rage inside of you, just really attacking God and his believers. It was unbelievable.
If you want to hear how much I hate Yahweh, you should see how much I hate Thor, and how much I hate Zeus, and all those other gods I also don't believe in. I'm just visceral.
Mm-hmm.
I get that all the time. If there's anything that I hear all the time, it's that I'm unreasonable and hateful.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two things people say about me the most.
It's weird. He's trying to say that we're attacking religion strongly as they are attacking atheism right now. That's kind of funny.
When you listen to debate tapes, as I have, and seen them speaking in public forums, that rage and that hatred against God and against those people that would affirm God comes out. They just can't control it.
I know I personally have a hard time controlling my inner rage. That's why it takes me so many takes sometimes, because it's like, oh, I don't want to seem like such an asshole this video.
Garbage must just be terrified of us. Like, they must just be like, when I meet an atheist, they're just gonna scream in my face and tell me
Yeah.
I'm stupid and hurt me, and they have no morals,
You know, all of
and like
those,
they're gonna physically.
yeah, like all of those debates where the atheists versus Christians, the atheists always, get super angry, start pounding at the podium and screaming at their opponents. It's unreal.
Say you've watched so many of these debates, like maybe instead of saying, hey, all atheists, like instead of literally laying out every anti-apologetic about to like create a bias about atheists that's ever existed since the beginning of time, maybe you would have less atheists if you had compelling arguments.
Yeah.
This is tired of getting people shouldn't be atheists.
I don't know. I need to
Me
get a
not
hold
to
of some
be.
of these atheist tapes that he was talking about.
I didn't even.
Atheist debates.
I
That's how all
didn't.
this is. They're probably VHS or beta.
Or it could have been reel to reel. We don't know what he was listening to.
I didn't catch that. But you know what? Now, if ever I go to like thrift stores or something, I'm gonna be on the lookout, look in the VHS section for those atheist tapes, just to see what we once believed and still do. But like you said earlier, I suppose around this time there weren't as many open atheists, especially, no internet. So for a lot of people, the things that he's saying and that other preachers are saying are like their only ideas of what atheists believe. So yeah, you're right. This is a good way to demonize them without ever having to hear what they say, and that's. Yeah, that's pretty much what's going on. I figured it out.
Well, and that's actually, I mean, to be serious for a second, that's what Shannon and I think you do on our all of our channels
Mhm.
are about. Like, let's be calm and rational about this and talk about the merits of it without the emotions getting involved at all. I think that is part of our attempted thing that we do here is to not be angry.
Oh yeah.
I make a very concerted effort to never attack or assume anything about the character of an interlocutor that I'm engaging in. Like, I really make a concerted effort. Like, unless that I've got some sort of evidence that they're like a really bigoted person,
Yeah.
I always utmost to try to understand their perspective, so that because if I don't want to ever hold beliefs about anything that don't hold up to scrutiny, so.
Oh yeah.
I need to be able to be scrutinized. And in order for that to happen, I need to be honest in conversations and really listen to what the other person is saying. So, I mean, essentially, I'm exactly what this guy says I am. That's what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is I have no morals, and I have bacterial brain cancer that makes me numb.
Yeah. But I.
Want communism. That's what I was trying to say. I just didn't articulate it well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I have a similar policy where I don't like say that anybody's stupid or unreasonable for what they're saying, unless and until I've thoroughly proven how wrong they are and how obvious it is that they're wrong. Then I'll call them a dumbass. But until then, we'll play it cool. We'll play it safe.
I saw Madeline Monroe here once at a speaking engagement at the University of Texas several years back. I'd never seen her in a speaking forum before, but I got to hear her that day, and the place was packed, and she was up there speaking, and she was going on this harangue about all the hypocrisy in the church. They're just hypocrites, and your parents teach you one thing at the church, but when they come back, they tell you to act that way, but they act completely different. And, and a lot of her points were well made because they were true. There is a lot of hypocrisy in the church.
Yeah.
But the key is, just because there's a lot of hypocrites and all this kind of nonsense doesn't mean that the religion itself is true. It doesn't follow that since there's some that don't follow the religion as it's stated, means that the religion itself is wrong.
So what you're saying is, the actions of the people don't necessarily reflect how correct their beliefs are. So if atheists are all communists with, the bacterial viral brain cancer with no morals and whatnot, that doesn't actually have an impact on whether or not they're correct on their disbelief or lack of a belief in God. Right?
He doesn't. I don't think that he really sees how very clearly some of the arguments that he's making for religion just transferred right on over to defending or completely undermining and contradicting the really shitty arguments that he's making about atheists and atheism.
Oh, yeah.
And also, atheists would not like many. Well, I can't say atheist. I would never say theists are stupid and theists have a form of brain cancer and theists have this and theists have, like, you would never catch me sitting in a chair pointing to my stupid handwritten chart with my dumb glasses telling you all about the reasons that you think the way that you do because of like you just, I wouldn't attack an entire group of people's character based on a position that they hold.
Oh, yeah.
I would pick apart the position and challenge them to do the same. Cast aspersions and judgment on that entire group of people. That's not very fucking Christian now, is it?
Or maybe it's really Christian.
Super
I
burn me.
Oh,
I didn't say that. You
That's
didn't.
line of the night.
You didn't hear that from me though.
What? No. What?
No.
And but that seemed to be our main point that night. But one thing I noticed was there's this viciousness in her tone of voice, this hatred coming out towards religionists. They don't have a brain and all this kind of stuff.
And you were just saying that atheism is a cancer to society. Can you hear yourself when you talk?
And of course she cussed and swore like a sailor that night, using vulgarities against the religionists and in her normal language. We would think that in common society you'd at least clean up your language a little bit in a public speaking form.
Why? If there's no God, there's no morals.
Right. It makes
But
sense.
along those,
Yes, because linguistic choices are moral. There's moral truth about linguistic.
Because Jesus had very specific ideas about which words for poop were okay, and which words they all mean the same, but don't.
Before the English language even really existed.
Yeah, in 1,000 years they're going to invent a certain language, and they're going to have a word for sex that I don't like. So don't use that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've read the Bible cover to cover, and not once did Jesus or God say fuck, okay? So that's off limits.
Oh.
All right? If you say that, you have no morals. Your morals are out the window. I do think there was a piss in there, though. That was fun.
Well, there's definitely a lot of ass in there in the King James version.
Oh, yeah.
Which I always, as a kid, even felt they made me feel uncomfortable reading Bible verses where they would talk about donkeys.
Yeah. And I lost my train of thought. Never mind. Let's continue.
lines,
Carry on.
I would just like to say that the Bible says that man without God is totally depraved, and he's born with a sinful nature, a rebellious nature that doesn't seek after God. Okay, there is three things that control a man. There is his own flesh, there is the world system, and there is Satan. Satan, a created being. And
God's not on that list. Just those three. His flesh, society, and Satan. God doesn't even make the list of the three things that can control him.
Yeah.
And they're born that way?
Yeah, that's the thing. God doesn't control you. He gives us free will, and he gives us free reign, and lets Satan control us as much as he will, because,
Oh, shit. And we're born that way. That's like the first thing you said was you're born that way. The Bible says they're born that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, then obviously, and he has to believe in free. Okay, I am giving him too much credit. I'm giving him too much credit.
No, he hasn't thought this
He
through.
probably can't spell determinist. So
No,
my bad.
even his own theology that Satan has the power to control, like that is having a lot of Christians right now cringing because nowhere in the Bible does it say that Satan has any power to do anything but to lie to people. Like Satan
Well,
he's not omnipotent. He's not omnipotent or omniscient. Go ahead.
right. But I mean, in Job, he was granted permission by God to affect things in Job's life, so it could happen.
Well, but that's the thing. That was the perfect example. He could only control, like Satan was only given power to control external circumstances. Like so, he's not Satan's not. Although I guess that in the New Testament, demons get into people and do things. So I don't know. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Stop trying to make sense of it, Paul. Just
Yeah.
okay. You're with us now.
This book desperately needs a reboot. Clean up some of the continuity errors.
I could do with the sequel. Yeah.
Satan hates us. We're rebellious, but Satan can add to that rebellion by making us even more venomous. He wants to kill us, keep us away from the truth, which is accepting Jesus Christ and turning our lives to Him.
And exactly where in the Bible does it say that? I mean, I don't know if these guys are fundamentalists or what. But yeah.
Why doesn't he just kill us then? Why does he have to go through all of his like ridiculous like lies and deceit and?
Yeah. Why would he hate us? Why would he hate us in the first place? Why would he care that much?
Well, Satan just likes to wreck God's nice things.
I mean, consider that he had a good reason to antagonize God, or no, it's not getting to that.
He'll do that through atheism, through hate, hating God, or false religions and cults, or just saying the ultimate pride ego trip, which is what he did, which was to say that I am God, or I want to be God. So these are just all lies of Satan, and a lot of times this rage, it may not be the individual. These people may have actually demonic influences on
I'm sure
them.
that.
So, either Satan is making you angry, making you hate God, or there's demons influencing you, and that's why you're an atheist. That's why you want to play God. It's Satan or demons, maybe both. That explains a lot. That explains the absolute rage that I see in all of these atheistic YouTubers. That I think we really got to the bottom of this.
This is really, really elucidating. I feel better, actually, that now I can really come to terms with what I am. It's been hard for me, just, thinking I was a normal person.
You've got me here now thinking of all the atheist YouTubers that I'm familiar with and trying to decide which ones are demons. So that's a fun project for you guys at home. You can make your own list.
Yeah, it's Satan or demons.
Place Rhino, 100% demon. Godless cranium, demon. Demon, I don't even think he's real.
Yeah.
That are making him this hateful and bitter.
And of course, a lot of the atheists want to deny the very existence of Satan, Jesus. Oh, there was no Jesus. I hear that a lot from these atheists. There wasn't. The Bible's untrue, and it's a bunch of fables, and it's picked up from other religions, and all this nonsense you're going to hear from these atheists.
Nonsense. I mean, I take it this guy's not going to respond to it because that's not, the point of this. But we have reasons for saying that. I mean, I personally do believe in a historical Jesus, but there's reasons why we're saying all of this. It's not just incoherent nonsense.
The other guy said, Satan gets into us and demons get into us, and that's what causes us to be like this. And then that guy said, we denied the existence of Satan, so I'm really fucking confused. Like, if Satan can't have an effect on us, if he can only lie to us, how can he persuade us to do anything? And if he does persuade us to do something, why would it be to not believe in him or God? I am lost as fuck.
I mean, if you don't believe in Satan or demons, then, you can't really catch on to what's really going on, that you're being controlled by Satan and or demons. So it's really a perfect plan that we have controlling us.
I actually enjoyed that he was not surprised that people would think there's no God. But to also think there's no Satan seemed to shock him even more.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I mean, they're being controlled by Satan. How do they not know?
Yeah, exactly.
Make all these arguments, but it falls like
When other guy keeps going, I feel like it's you, Paul, doing that, and I get real
It's not
confused.
me. I'm
I know, I realize that, but it's confusing in the moment.
a house of cards. When you start checking the archaeological evidences for the Bible, you check in the historical evidences for the Bible. Like just sitting around here, I've got a magazine that comes out regularly called Biblical Archaeology Review. Archaeological evidence for the Scripture.
He's
Here's
dropping
another
it.
magazine that gets into these things too. But the archaeological evidence for the Scripture just
It's overwhelming.
buttresses the validity of the Scriptures as they're given in history, and that
positive.
Yeah.
So also, he wants to hold up here. I don't know if you guys have seen Indiana Jones 3, where they obviously find the Holy Grail and Joseph Arimathea. So we know it's all true, because look at this thing I'm holding up that somebody wrote.
Yeah, I don't know if that particular magazine had a Christian bias or whatnot, but I mean
Well, we call it biblical in the title, so it.
yeah, that's should have thought about that. But the actual archaeological and historical evidence for the Bible, I mean, we don't have evidence that Jesus actually performed miracles. You know, you're not going to find historical evidence of that. You're going to find evidence of a following. You're going to find evidence of a death. For those of us who believe in a historical Jesus. Do you guys believe in a historical Jesus? Are you guys mythicists?
For my purposes in life, I find mythicism to be an interesting thought experiment. But in terms of the people that I deal with, the people I love who believe, it's a burden of proof I don't need to take on. I find
Right.
that probably the passages in Josephus and Tacitus are enough to be to say that there was a guy named Jesus who may have been the basis of this. Much like I could quite happily accept that there was a guy named Paul Bunyan, or that that Johnny Appleseed might have been a guy. Like it makes the fact that there might have been a guy who shares that name for me is an easy conceit to make. So I'm with you. I think probably there was a historical Jesus, but it makes little difference to any argument that I might make.
Yeah. What about you,
I
Shannon?
would say that I'd say that I haven't take a strong position, honestly.
Right.
So Paul's research is significantly more than me. It's not in the realm of things that I address, and something that matters much to me for the types of dialogues that I have.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just go for the sake of argument in almost every discussion that I have. It's not of value unless I grant to the person, because a lot of what I do on my channel, aside from posting videos where I compile psychological research so that I can kind of relate it to real life experiences, is having complex dialogues with theists a lot of the time. So in order for them to be productive, I can't spend a great deal of time debating whether or not Jesus actually existed, and I have no footing to stand on anyway because I never researched it. So, I grant it and just say, sure, fine.
Yeah.
Let's say a guy named Jesus existed, prove he's magic and that he's the son of God and that everything that they said about him is a fact.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I just don't have a horse in the race, I guess would be my answer.
Yeah, that's respectable. I find it interesting because obviously there's quite a number of atheist YouTubers, and I watch some of them sometimes, you guys included, of course. But I hear a variety of people saying, Jesus probably didn't exist, or those who say that he did, and I just thought it would be interesting to hear your opinions on it. Now, I personally really had to delve into the subject for a couple of videos, because I received some pretty well-deserved criticism and then really looked into it. And I'm not trying to convince you guys of this, but me personally, I found that, yeah, there almost certainly was a historical Jesus, that he did have a following, but there's absolutely no, not record, but there's no evidence that he was a miracle worker, no evidence that he resurrected from the dead. And
Wouldn't be the first real person that existed that following. There are
oh yeah,
thousands and thousands and thousands of them throughout the world.
yeah, and
That you'll find historical evidence for their existence 2,000 years from now. Does that mean that, does that legitimize them?
But I don't understand this thing you're talking about. Wait, so you went and you looked at the evidence and then you made up your mind afterwards?
Oh,
That's really weird. Why didn't
how
you
would you think?
have a conclusion and then just go find the evidence that supported that? I don't understand this methodology you're using.
you're right. I think I have been doing it backwards.
Your shit together. We know you. People know that we know you. Out of the club.
Yeah, but yeah, there's historical evidence for some things in the Bible, but not that there is a God or,
No,
or there
there's
are miracles and stuff. So yeah.
I mean, I always relate it to, and people hate it, So there's an issue of Spider-Man where he's in New York and he meets Barack Obama. So is that? I could find all kinds of evidence that affirms that New York City exists and that Barack Obama was president. Therefore, Spider-Man
Oh yeah.
exists. Like it's
Oh yeah.
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 So there's the Bible. The archaeology affirms occasional names of cities and leaders, not the events, and certainly not the supernatural events. So I think we follow it pretty close to the same position there, probably.
They could look around themselves and see what was going on in the world and incorporate it into the narrative that they were writing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's good historical fiction.
That's not enough for me to be compelled, especially when a lot of it's just internally inconsistent.
Oh yeah.
We have today. It's an amazing thing.
Can I plug a couple books too?
Why, sure, go
All
right
right.
ahead.
There's the book Why I Believe by Dr. James Kennedy. It's excellent. It has
I'm gonna skip
New
a bit.
Testament. About this was confirmed by the Dead Sea Scrolls also of the New
Well,
Testament.
that book there is really getting into the Dead Sea Scrolls, showing the evidence.
Right.
David Estrada and William White, the first New Testament, gets into all kinds of excellent evidence that anyone could want, proving the validity of the Bible and that it came from about the time that it claims to.
No, actually, the Dead Sea Scrolls and other similar artifacts prove that, the Old Testament is a really old book, and it has been pretty well preserved throughout that time. But it's, they aren't old enough to be before any particular prophecy was fulfilled or anything. I mean, yeah, the Bible is an old book. It's pretty old, but that doesn't mean that what's written in it is true.
I'm just so excited that the book he's holding up is not by J. Warner Wallace or Josh McDowell. I don't even care. I'll happily take these.
The Iliad's an old book. Does that mean that what's in it is true?
Yeah, I mean, well,
Really? Odyssey.
yeah, isn't it Hindu texts are like the oldest religious texts? I know Hinduism is the oldest religion, but are those the oldest texts that we have? Because I mean, there's
Hammurabi Code for sure, that the Mesopotamian stuff that predates the Old Testament. I don't know if it's the oldest, but we definitely have stuff older than the Old Testament.
Oh yeah. So we have tons of historical evidence for that. Then why aren't we, ancient Egyptian, ancient Mesopotamian religions, maybe Hindu?
Epic of Gilgamesh. There's a lot of religious and a lot of what was in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Well, that's the oldest. That's the oldest flood narrative we have.
Yeah.
There's also within the Epic of Gilgamesh, I think I can't remember the name of the goddess, but I was watching Digital Hammurabi the other day, which is an awesome little channel where they're like ancient Sumerian. They're linguists and historians, and they went over the story of the goddess that descended into. There was a goddess that kind of mirrored the Jesus in a lot of the narrative that took place. I mean, she wasn't by any means a saint. Let me tell you, but like her journey through it kind of mirrored it. So there's a lot of allegorical similarities between the texts.
Yeah, if you want to trigger a Christian, bring that stuff up.
Well, things traveled through word of mouth and had influence over cultures through time. So that impact could have been, I'm not saying that it was written directly at that narrative, but those narratives could have had influence over the people that were writing.
Of course. And Sylvan, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Sylvan Secrets in the chat says he believes the Vedic texts are the oldest, and I believe that's what I was thinking of as well.
Right. A lot of times he's skeptical.
Sorry?
It's interesting because I'd never heard of them. I'll have to look that up.
Oh yeah, there are a number of Hindu like scriptures, or not really scriptures, but like stories, I think. I forget. Okay. I haven't read them, but yeah.
And atheists, they try to late date the Bible and say, well, it was just somebody wrote it hundreds of years later.
Yeah, it doesn't fit their ideas.
Right, it doesn't fit their ideas. They say, don't confuse me with the facts. My mind is already made up. But there's plenty of evidence to support the scriptures, the Bible, the dates of the Bible, and the historicity of Christ, the apostles, and all these other things. And I might as well.
And claims like these, they say that, especially prophecies. My favorite are prophecies. And that the Bible was written before, and the Bible was written before the prophecy, and then was fulfilled, and then maybe it was written about it in a later part of the Bible, or that's my favorite stuff to respond to, because when you really look it up, when you really research it, you find that it's either not accurate at all, it was written way after, so they would have known about it, or, you know what, I think those are the only two options. But
the other option is they're completely misinterpreting. Like my favorite to do with any prophecy passages, I tend to, almost every passage you can find a Jewish rabbi talking about why they don't believe it. And I tend to forward those videos along to people, because it's like, here's an Orthodox Jew who believes in the Old Testament, and letting you know why that is clearly not a prophecy. I mean, I don't even have to get involved.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
We'll wrap up one more excellent. Now this is a classic. This is a classic. It's been around for a long time. It's by Josh McDowell. Evidence that demands a verdict.
I just said no, Josh McDowell.
God.
You overestimate them.
How is he here? It's like he's haunting us. Damn it. Classic. Mother God. All right.
Carry on.
Yeah.
Fine, I'm leaving.
I don't know how we keep overestimating these guys. I can only hope that he brings up Nazis. He already brought up communists, so I don't know if they're going to bring it up again. But if they bring up Nazis, I really think we've hit all the points here.
That's true. Then you got to black out bingo.
And then we all have bingo. That's got to be the only thing.
Another outstanding book.
Get any book by Josh McDowell. There's another little one, easy to read, that's great. It's called More Than a Carpenter.
Right.
And I also have a Josh McDowell book. It's called...
We got two of them. I think I'm gonna skip all of these books.
McDowell book club.
Yeah. There
was no Jesus. The Bible's a bunch of trash, and all that normal trash that you'll hear from atheists is exactly that. Trash, and can be thrown in the trash can of history along with all the other bad.
I'm just really confused as to whether or not it's trash.
This of course reminds me of one of my favorite Hitchens quotes. That which can be asserted without evidence can be rejected without evidence. So,
Yeah.
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 ideas like atheism. Okay, so there's plenty of documentation, evidence, many more books than what me and Dale have gone over. In fact, if you want to call or write our ministries, we can give you bibliographies of many other outstanding books from scholars in their fields attesting to what we're speaking of right now. But we're not going to get into all of that anymore for purposes of time.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move back to our charts, and we're going to move back to the last page here. This is where we left off last time. We had proceeded through how atheistic thought combines with communistic thought, which leads to oppression of religion, trying to suppress religion through government control, oppress the people, come up with laws and things to try to keep people from worshiping God.
By the way,
yeah, we already talked about that, but yeah.
How dare these governments try and come up with laws and things?
God, that's not what government's for. That hurts my face.
this is happening in our country. And,
oh, Lord.
Our country was founded on religious freedom and a belief in God. And
it's one or the other. It's you're free to believe whatever you believe, or it's founded that we believe this. It's not the same thing. And you definitely were not founded as a Christian nation. Maybe we were majority Christian, but the founding fathers didn't seem to be Christian, or at least not strongly. And the U.S. laws that were founded either at the beginning or anything since then weren't based on religion. Well, except, maybe sometimes, conservatives, politics, whatever. But no, the Constitution is not Christian. In fact, it's the opposite, because, it says that governments cannot, make any law respecting an establishment of religion. That includes Christianity. If it was a Christian nation, they would say, hey, our state religion or our official religion is Christianity. But no, they didn't do that. They did the opposite of that.
I don't know, you're talking to two Canadians. We're just sitting here nodding.
Oh. Yeah, I knew that. I forget that sometimes. Actually, come to think of it, I believe since you two are Canadian, then so far on this podcast, half of the guests have been American, presumably, and the other half have been Canadian. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's fair, 'cause in case you're American, Stick's American, and Mike's Canadian.
Yeah. But do you guys think there's a reason why there are a number of Canadian atheists on YouTube? Because I feel like in the United States, especially in certain parts of the U.S. that we call the Bible Belt, that it can get really religious, and there could be a really strong, social pressure and political pressure for Christianity and Christian beliefs. And a lot of atheists on YouTube are, in a way, pushing against that or responding to that. Is there a similar thing going on in Canada or in parts of Canada?
Well, certainly, I feel like I live in Canada's Bible Belt. I always talk about, Alberta, where I live, is Canada's Texas in almost every way. Everything's bigger, oil-based economy, all those kind of things. A couple of big cities, and everything else is, little towns with, more churches than people in the towns. So I feel like there is some geographical. We do have our Bible belts. I feel like our coasts are more like the American coasts in terms of, being a little more liberal in their politics and things like that. But I don't know, Shan, what do you think? Is it just because it's cold and we have less to do?
Maybe when you're saying coast, I think you might just be thinking of the Pacific coast, because over on the Atlantic coast, where I actually live.
Sorry, I'm doing the exact same thing.
You're thinking that Canada stops at Ontario, is what you're
correct.
thinking. Yeah, that's what makes me want to punch people like you in the face.
Well, it's where America stopped.
Provinces after Ontario, all the way to the ocean. And yeah, that's just, Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Yeah. Anyway, but pushing past that, I'll deal with him later. It's because there's a proportionate amount of atheist YouTubers from Canada, as like when you look at the ones from the States, I think it's representative of, I guess, the population. But
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what to say. Maybe we're just awesome because they're so.
I don't know if we're disproportionate. We're just louder.
Yeah, we are. We have cooler accents. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well,
I haven't really. I'd have to look into the phenomena. I just
Yeah.
think, and we also we congregate together too. Like we all work really, really well. Like Vice Rhino, Godless Cranium, Logic, Paulogia, myself. Probably omitting a Canadian or two in there. Just
Yeah. I can think of one that
My
doesn't
test.
cooperate, but
Okay.
whatever.
So,
Don't be like that.
So I guess I fit in with the Canadian atheist crowd then. Am I doing well?
you absolutely will adopt you.
We've adopted many Americans.
We like Americans. I used to be one.
No, I honestly I would love to move to Canada, mostly for like political reasons. So I guess now I know some of the areas to avoid. Neat.
That's right.
Alberta.
Yeah.
That's it.
The separation of church and state has been actually twisted to be for the government against God now. Actually, it was originally intended as separation of church and state, meaning that God was the superior, the state was underneath. But it's been twisted around. This is a good book also.
No.
I don't
No.
think he understands what separation means.
It means that God is better than the state. That's what it means. God isn't the state. That's literally what it means.
There's a difference between, church and God. We can separate the church from state, but God is still controlling the state, all right? The state is about God, not the church. There's a difference.
He doesn't understand, like, when he separates his socks and his underwear, he must obviously feel like one of those is the superior and superior.
Subordinate relationship. You can't separate anything. There needs to be a hierarchy. That's what separation means. It's synonymous with hierarchy.
Suffice it to say that the U.S. Constitution has never been based on God or the Bible or Jesus or religion or what have you, as I'm sure you can guess.
So, telling about this happening in our country, and what it is.
What's the name of it?
It's called.
Oh, no more books.
It's by Marshall Foster, and it's an excellent book. You can get these at Christian bookstores, Ministries for Christ.
Maybe Walden's
maybe
book.
even Walden's.
Usually put them on. If they don't have them, you can get them special order.
Right.
In most cases.
Right.
All right. With that said,
Let me special order this Christian book.
Yeah, the fact that they're talking about bookstores at all tells you what era.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they have to special order it instead of ordering it online. We definitely live in a different era now. But I do remember going to a certain Christian bookstore, Lifeway, a lot throughout my childhood. And that's where I found a lot of, like, the Christian, games and stuff that I would play sometimes. Like, they have a Christian card game called Redemption. It's terrible, but it's really interesting, I think. But I'm getting sidetracked.
as a matter of record, many atheists who have gone public with.
Wait, I forgot to. I didn't sign up for the atheist registry. Am I in trouble? Do I owe taxes to somebody?
No, you just you're not officially in our atheist cult.
Oh, man.
So like you have been demoted to agnostic, so you should be fine for now. But I love.
Sorry. Half of line 2 is like crossed out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, you're trying to underline it, but you, like, crossed out half the line there. Good job, guys.
Did they not have highlighters in 1982 or 73 or whatever the hell?
That might have been a later invention. I don't know.
Straight edge, just like a ruler. Like, are they
No.
really calling us stupid and they
God-
did this and then put it on TV?
But the thing is, God is their ruler. They don't need another ruler above God. I think that's where this comes from.
God is a shit ruler. He's just like, he is bad at everything. That's why I hate him so much. It's not the brain cancer. It's because he's just so shit at making people draw lines straight.
Put them on. If they don't have them, you can get them.
Skip back a bit.
Right. In most cases.
Right.
All right. With that said, as a matter of record, many atheists who have gone public with their campaign to secularize America do not hesitate to admit they are communists, leftists, or socialists, and that they're anti-religion.
Oh, communists, leftists, or socialists, because they're all the same. Like a leftist is the same as a. Okay. All right. All right.
Fucking Bernie Sanders.
I know when I couldn't get in the Communist Party, I was like, fuck it, I'll be a socialist.
That's right. It's my safety. It's my safety economic position.
Yeah. Well,
It's got to be one or the other.
I mean, are agnostics socialists and true atheists communists? Is that what it is? Just, once you feel stronger, you feel stronger. But I mean, I guess there is a bit of a connection between being left-leaning politically and being less religious, but let's see where they take it.
Hey, listen, the symbol for atheism is what? An A, the color red. It's all there.
Ooh.
Red, communist.
Oh my God. You're
Spelled out
right.
for you.
Wouldn't that be anarchy, though?
No, probably.
It does look a lot like the anarchy symbol, which, yeah. Anyhow.
Illuminati check if you can't convince people to convert to communism.
Activity is an outgrowth of their political commitment to Hegel or Marx. We all know about Karl Marx, okay?
Okay, so we're all Marxists. Right, got it, sure, fine.
Because God was so big on capitalism. Jesus
Yeah,
just
right?
can't shut up. Jesus can't shut up about capitalism and how everyone should have their own things and not share.
So excited that he was just flipping tables with excitement. Just like he couldn't even contain how excited he was about how people selling shit.
It goes on, modern anti-theists, people that are against theism with the belief in God, modern anti-theists proclaim their unbelief in God as part of a package deal which includes totalitarian socialism as the ultimate goal.
If you buy now, we'll throw in socialism.
What's a
So-
totalitarian?
You guys have already admitted that you're totalita. You know what? This guy can't pronounce it. I can't either. But you're socialists.
Totalitarian.
Totalitarian. That's right. Yeah.
God. Obviously, everybody, the only reason I came on this podcast is so that everybody could be really clear that I'm losing track. What do I have? I have bacterially induced brain cancer, a mental illness. I am a totalitarian, leftist, socialist, communist with no empathy or morals. Who I'm not a Nazi yet, though. I'm waiting for it. It's coming.
I hope
my
so.
fingerprint is full.
We are
Like how they
getting.
packaged ideologies together here like it's a deal. Like if you,
Yeah,
if you
it's a
get
package.
several together, it's a discount.
God, they're just like, what are the ideologies everybody hates? And then they made a list, and they're like, okay, that's what atheists do. Oh my God.
We are getting towards the end of
Yeah.
the podcast, unless you guys want to stay for another hour. But we only have a little bit of time left to get to the Nazism. Let's hope they get to it quick.
Of course, a few atheists would deny that their atheism is connected with socialism or communism. Upon closer questioning, however, these individuals virtually always have a hidden political agenda that includes the denial of religious freedom.
That's right.
Okay, so you guys may not know it, but you are communist Marxists, all right? Yeah.
God. And we don't want people to have the freedom to believe whatever religion that they want. Because my entire thing is that I value autonomy, and I don't believe that people should be constrained by dogmatic thought. So, obviously, it's really important that I impose my beliefs on other people, because that's not the exact motherfucking opposite of what I want.
Because
at all.
Because religious freedom is a totally Christian idea, right? To be free to be not Christian?
Of course, yeah. We are the one and only possible way, but believe what you want.
Okay.
What isn't based on Christianity? Western civilization's based on Christianity. All of our values are based on Christianity. Morality is based on Christianity. Ethics are based on Christianity.
Delicious chicken.
And
Also based on Christianity. So.
God damn it.
Don't want to tolerate a belief in God. I don't believe in God. Nobody's going to believe in God. You don't have a right to believe in God. You have no right to have a church over there, and it gets
Totally. Yeah, totally. Oh boy.
this usual state. That's why the communists are always trying to eliminate any religious belief in God, because they want the state to be God. They want everyone to be subservient to the state so they can control the people.
And that's
not wrong. He's not wrong.
That was the first thing you said. It was true.
Yeah. Yep.
That's why I don't want state atheism. Okay. All right, okay.
That's why the Soviet Union, for years, they destroyed churches, they turned them into museums, wouldn't let people practice their religions.
That's where we're heading to.
I'm sorry, I don't know if that's funny to Americans or just me, but they've been saying that sort of thing for a while. I hear a lot, like they're taking away our religious freedom. Well, I guess they've been taking it away since this aired. We're not headed that way, I assure you.
Well, it tends to, when you boil it down, it tends to be they're reducing our special status.
Mm-hmm.
Or elevating other people to have the same rights that we've had, but they didn't. That tends to be what it is, as opposed to, yeah.
We're becoming less and less and less of a really monopoly of a powerful majority, and other people are getting to have a say. Is run, and we don't like that. So that means that our rights are being taken away.
Yeah, and we're becoming communist. That's where we're headed.
That's a logical conclusion.
Uh-huh.
For that reason, but it was God Bless America at one time, and God came through with God Bless America. But now that we are turning away from God, it's not going to be God Bless America. We're going to end up just like the Russians.
What? I thought he was going to point out something like, we're no longer saying God Bless America, but nope, he's just saying that's going to get rid of. And, as Canadians, you probably don't notice, but still, to this day, in public schools, not every school, but a lot of schools start with the Pledge of Allegiance, which states that we are one nation under God. And it's actually been held up in the Supreme Court. That's printed on our money, and that's not going away anytime soon. So, yeah, no.
We also know that God doesn't love anyone in communist countries, nor answer their prayers. That's just something we know from the Bible.
Right.
Could be if people don't stand up and do something. It requires little intelligence, however, to contrive groundless theories to attack something. The trick is to deny having to prove the theory. And what he's talking about...
Oh, no. Oh, no. So we're saying we don't have to prove it because we are unintelligent and can't prove it. So we say we don't have to. It's not that you have the complete wrong definition of atheists. It's that we're stupid. Great.
But also, just imagine that those two sentences were being said about evolution. It takes very little intelligence to stand up and yell against the theory. You're right. It doesn't take a lot. Seen that firsthand.
To know that somebody on Twitter made us a bingo card, and it's amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Atheism equals communism. Atheists are depressed. Back to the Old Testament. Look at the tree. But where do you get your morals? You know in your heart there's a God.
That is
from nothing.
The second law of thermodynamics. You just want to sin. I'll pray for you, Hitler. Ooh, I love this.
So you're on the beach and you find this watch.
You're really an agnostic.
But what if you're wrong?
Dictionary says, oh my god, this is that's gold. That's gold.
Thank you, Vegas X.
This is the best.
Thank you.
Look at the truth.
About here, in all this, and I'm saving time by not reading it all, is that atheists like to attack theism and the Bible and Christianity by coming up with all kinds of theories. They'll say like, well, there was no Jesus. And then they try to make us prove it, and yet they don't have to do anything about it. And if you can give them evidence, then they just go on to something else. Well, they used to say there was no Hittites. And they use that as an argument to say you can't believe the Bible because it mentions Hittites and there is no Hittites found in archaeology or anywhere else, so therefore it's just a fable. But then when the minute they find the Hittites, and they have in archaeology, then they just go on to something else. Well, there was no Nazareth.
Or no.
Yeah, well, I'm not entirely sure about this particular example. Maybe there were Hittites or not. I didn't look into it. But there are some pretty glaring issues with the historicity of the Bible, like the entire Tanakh, the first 5 books of the Bible about Moses, because there was no evidence that ancient Israelites were ever in ancient Egypt, but instead there's far more evidence that they came out of ancient Canaanite religion and the ancient Canaanite people, and they knew about Egypt, but weren't slaves there, and that's a pretty big part of the Bible. So, what about that? And that's not me, sitting back and saying, hey, prove it. You can't prove it. I'm an atheist. I'm unintelligent. Here's something that you need to prove to me. That's an actual glaring issue that we do have against you,
Like
Sounds
also,
like Go ahead.
If you expect me to believe it, and you want me to believe it, why shouldn't you have to prove it?
Yeah.
Like you could just walk up to me and assert a bunch of stuff and give me a book and say, you believe this because everything in it is true. And I'm supposed to just be like, okay. What other avenue of your life would that be an acceptable and reasonable way to behave? None of them? Right, exactly. So, Jesus Christ. Calm down.
Yeah.
Jins? Oh, okay. No questions for you. I'll just believe whatever you say because be of God, and who the hell am I?
Did you have something you wanted to say, Paul?
No, I was going to mention Kent Hovind, and then I thought better of it.
It was tempting to pull something from Ken Ham or Kent Hovind, But
I'm glad you didn't. It's good to get a palate cleanser with something else.
yeah, I didn't want to make you mad.
That's true. I may seem calm on camera, but Shannon can attest that I have to watch these things several times to get the Hulk
Yeah.
frustrations
Same
out of
thing.
the way.
Same thing for me. The first time I watch something I respond to, I'm like, what the fuck? I can't sit through this. But then after a couple times, it's like, okay, I get what he's saying. Let's go. Thank you, Brian Stevens, for the $2 in the super chat. For Heath to buy rum in a few years. Thank you. I will definitely buy rum in a few
I think
years.
rum's gonna be more expensive than that in the future. I'm no economist, but
he still has, years to donate more, so we'll be fine. Thank
he's a good
you.
guy. So is that a reasonable place for us to wrap up? I think I'm gonna unfortunately have to
Oh yeah,
end up some family stuff.
Oh yeah, I was about to wrap up soon, anyways. But yeah,
Cool.
Now's as good a time as any, unless they were going to talk about Nazis soon. But that's fine.
I think you might have to do that homework on your own time.
All right, but thank you guys.
No, I'll never know. I'll never know if I'm a Nazi.
Thanks, Brian Steven. Thanks, Brian Steven, for the 10 adjusting for future prices.
Sweetheart,
See,
awesome.
I'm making you money just by being here.
Thanks. Thanks for begging for donations for me, so I don't have to do it. Yeah, I do think at the end of, eventually at the middle and end of the streams, I will be thanking all the super chats, the donators, and the supporters on Patreon. So I'll get that situated eventually. But that's going to be it for this podcast. Thank you so much, Paul and Shannon, for joining me.
Thanks so much for having us. It was fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, maybe next episode we'll uneven the American to Canadian ratio on this show. See which one wins. But thank all you guys for viewing, even though the stream was unlisted for about half of it. Subscribe to the Sinner's Pew channel to view the whole thing in the future. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Good night.